told you there was a genre of music out there, so vast and deeply complex, it would take a lifetime to fully understand it? And what if I told you that very same genre could transform your life in unimaginable ways and rewrite everything you knew about music and music production? That genre is ambient. Producing ambient music is not for the faint of heart. It's a creative endeavor that requires a massive time commitment, endless trial and error, and the willingness to uncover deep mysteries that continue to evolve and change the further you dive into it. But those mysteries of what might unfold and what awaits you could be the adventure of a lifetime. You may have stumbled upon this video because you're curious about ambient. Maybe you've always had that inspirational spark in the back of your mind that one day you're going to learn the mysterious art of ambient music. Maybe you're already somewhere along on your path, but you feel like you don't know enough and want to learn more to help you reach that next level, not only creatively, but gain that little bit of extra knowledge that might help you further along on your own musical journey. This video, while aimed towards the absolute beginner in the genre, may provide you with a little bit of advice. After all, it's helpful to return to the basics of anything to remind yourself of the foundations of which your knowledge and your practice is built upon. I want this video to be filled with the kind of helpful advice that I wish I had when I was first starting out. In ambient music, there's a whole list of mysterious rules and enigmas that if I can answer some of those questions for you at the beginning of your journey, you'll have a much better understanding later on when these concepts become second nature to you. The important thing is to stay on the path, not give up, and continue to stay open to learning new things. Ambient is a genre which is so open-ended, there's literally 10,000 different ways you could approach it. My own personal journey getting into ambient music was actually a pretty simple one. I've been producing music for almost 25 years now, but I've only been producing ambient exclusively for the past decade. In the summer of 2012, I was standing in the parking lot with an old friend of mine, waiting for some Thai food that we ordered. Being that we're both musicians, we were talking about music. I don't remember the exact context of the conversation we were having, but at one point he looked me right in the eye and he said, "Have you ever heard the music of Solar Fields?" Of course I had, but it was at that very moment the light bulb went off in my head and I knew what I wanted to do for the rest of my life: produce ambient music. The very next day, I began my journey. With little knowledge of the genre and no tools in my arsenal, with the exception of an old copy of Reason 2.5 and Digital Performer, I started experimenting and trying anything I could to bring the music I heard in my head into reality. I'm fully aware that not everyone is going to have a parking lot epiphany and everyone's journey isn't going to be the same, but it might be helpful to realize that we all have to start somewhere. The important thing is that you stay committed to the path, and no matter where the journey ends, you have to give everything you have to it and don't give up. It's not going to be easy, but it can be rewarding. When you're first starting out creating ambient music, you might have a ton of basic questions that are very important to get answered so you don't end up going down a path that either doesn't work out or becomes too expensive. You don't need to spend any money to make ambient music, but like any other genre of music out there might be a startup cost. Whether that's buying your first synth or getting a computer to run all the cool software that's available to us these days, you're going to need a little bit of hardware right off the bat. Let me make one thing clear. You don't need expensive gear to make good music. I'll say that again. You don't need the fanciest tools available to make awesome sounds. You could literally start with a free synthesizer and a microphone to record sounds in the real world and do just as good or better as someone using a $25,000 modular rig that makes nothing more than some fancy blips and bloops. I'm not saying either is bad, I'm just saying there is more than one way to reach your goal. The important thing is to make careful and conscious decisions when acquiring new gear. The best synth is the one you have in front of you, and you don't need the latest and the greatest things to elevate your production game. New tools can help, but ultimately it comes down to skill, the amount of effort, and the time you put into it. Another big question that I get asked all the time is hardware versus software. One of the more popular opinions that you might hear or read is that hardware is better, especially when it comes to sound quality. Is this true? Well, yes and no. Hardware, especially good quality hardware, is usually based on actual analog synthesis, digital synthesis, or a combination of both, such as my DeepMind 12. Other hardware synths, like my Hydra synth, are entirely digital, but in my opinion, with the right amount of programming, can sound just as good as analog. But is it better than software? Not necessarily, and I'll tell you why. We are living in a time where software has become extremely powerful. Companies like Yuhi, Synapse Audio, Spectrasonics, and UVI, just to name a few, have created really great products that in a way do sound just as good as analog hardware. They also offer you the freedom that comes with software, such as automation, complex routing, and audio manipulation, as well as the speed that comes when working with software. While you cannot replace the feeling or the sound that comes from actual hardware, the important thing is to find what works best for you. For some, that might be turning physical knobs and playing with buttons and faders like an actual instrument. For others, like myself, I find that I'm way faster and more comfortable working with software because it offers me a quick workflow and I love the results. Again, the important thing is to try a few things and find a good balance between what you enjoy using and your desired result. When it comes to composition, this can be as simple or as complex as you want it to be. There have been plenty of good ambient tracks that use one or two chords because in ambient, it's just as much about how you are processing those notes as what notes you're actually playing. That said, it's important to learn the basics of music theory and use that as a starting point. After that, you can explore what happens when you break those rules and start using tools that allow you to bend and manipulate audio. One of the hallmarks of this kind of music is the swirling of notes and chords where it sounds like several notes are being played at once. This is what happens when you layer your sounds on top of each other and use processing tools like long delays and reverbs with really long decays and reflections. One way you might start composing is just to start by playing a simple note on a piano and adding a ton of sustain, either by using a sustain pedal or adding a really long reverb. Listen to the tail of the note rather than focusing on the percussive attack at the beginning. What do you hear? This tail can be used as your starting point for diving into the world of ambient composition. Using tools such as granular synthesizers, further delay and reverbs, even multi-effects processors such as Unfiltered Audio's Triad or Paul X-Stretch can really set the tone for your next ambient track and help you build that foundation to take the journey even further. If there's one tip you can take away from this video, it's this. No matter what you do, you should always focus on the sounds themselves before you begin processing them. Stick to the basics. Don't try and overdo things just to compensate for a lack of skill or programming at the core level of sound design. Learning the basics and then practicing those basics over and over again until you feel confident to start adding effects can be a great way to quickly become a good sound designer. Using synthesis techniques such as unison, LFOs, multi-stage envelope generators, and other core synthesis methods, if done correctly, won't need a ton of effects on top of them just to sound good. Adding things like exciters or stereo image processors, or even unnecessary amounts of EQ or compression can lead to murky and muddy sounds when not done properly. You can use any of these, but learning how to use them the right way is always your best bet. Ambient music is all about subtlety, and it's no surprise that adding subtle amounts of these types of processors is key to getting a good result each and every time. Focus on the sounds first, then the effects. A good sound doesn't need hardly any effects at all. With time, you'll be able to get there. Once you've created some sounds, it's time to put it all together and mix your track into something that sounds more listenable. Mixing is the art of level adjustment, but also the stage where you can really carve out some beautiful spaces, especially when it comes to ambient music. Stripping away layers to reveal even more details can be part of what makes ambient music so exciting to listen to. Imagine being able to tuck away sounds in your mix where your listener might not be able to hear them on the first or second playthrough, but then be able to discover new details about the track they hadn't heard before in subsequent listens. This is all possible through careful considerations while mixing. While the art of mixing is a topic worthy of several videos in and of itself, let me give you a little bit of advice when it comes to ambient. With so much focused on the mid-range, make sure you fully understand the topic of frequency separation and what it means to create a balanced mix. Make sure you have at least some element filling out the lower end of the frequency spectrum, such as a warm bass or a deep pad. One trick you might consider doing is making every bass element below a certain frequency mono to give yourself a much more solid foundation in the lower frequency ranges. You could use a mono bass or a utility plugin, such as the one in Ableton Live, to make your bass elements mono below a certain threshold. Also, make sure you're not crowding too many elements in the same frequency space or adding too much resonance to a sound by overdoing your filtering. Resonance is nothing more than increased amplitude at a particular range. Massive spikes in resonance, such as resonance in pads, can really take a track that's enjoyable to ear-piercingly terrible in just a few seconds. Use a spectrum analyzer on your individual tracks as well as your master fader to get a clearer picture of what's happening before you reach the final mixing stage. After mixing is done and you've started to build a collection of tracks, it's time to create your artist identity and start releasing music. The first piece of advice I have for you in this regard is really spend time coming up with an artist name that you love. It should not only fit the style of music you work in, but make it easy to read and understandable to a larger audience. I know this step can be hard, but if you come up with a list of 10 or even 20 choices and narrow it down, eventually one of those is going to speak to you. You're going to be using the artist name a lot, so make it make sense to you, and it'll make sense to your fans as you continue to build a following. Now that you've got your artist identity locked in, it's time to release your first album. Now you have the option here to release your music on your own or go shopping for a record label to help you release it, but take it from me, and this may come as a surprise, coming from someone who has co-founded 2 ambient music record labels, but I highly suggest you self-release your first couple albums. Not only will this help you begin to build a following, but it will allow you to practice marketing yourself, which is something that a label might not necessarily do for you. Unfortunately, shameless self-promotion is just part of the business, and in order for you to stand out amongst the crowd, you have to give your potential audience a reason to go check out your music. Bandcamp, SoundCloud, and other social outlets such as Ambient Online and KVR are great ways to get your music heard and start to build a fan base. Once you've gone through that process a couple times, you might want to start shopping around for a record label to elevate your career to the next level, and when the time is right, those labels, like ours, will be ready for you. We are inside of Ableton Live 11. Now, the goal of this video is to show you guys how to build a beginner ambient track. Now, I'm going to try to keep this as simple as I can for you, but the goal of it is just to give you guys some core concepts and some things to think about, especially when it comes to ambient music. One of those concepts is the idea of sonic depth of field. Now, when we think about depth of field, we think about photography and blurring out the background, certain details, right? We can do this in audio, and the way we're going to do that is by using creative uses of mixing, filtering, and then also using different elements to bring out details. And that's what we consider depth of field. So when something is pushed back into the lower frequency ranges or filtered out, that's further down in the background. And then when we bring those things out or reveal those details, that's what comes to the foreground. So it's sort of this idea that you're playing with the frequency spectrum as you would with a depth of field scale, say in like videography or photography, okay? So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go over to arrangement view. I'm in Ableton Live 11. I've already set my key. We're gonna play in G minor today. And then I'm going to grab a sample. We're just gonna start like, how would you start building something, right? I wanna give a quick shout out to Marcel and Libby from Free to Use Sounds. They are one of a kind. I mean, seriously, there's no other couple like them in the world who's doing this, and they're traveling across the world recording these really cool sounds. And not only that, they're giving all these sounds away basically for free. So you can use any of their sounds in any of your productions. And they've pretty much won the race to the bottom as far as cost goes. It's really affordable. So check them out. They have a huge library. I think I purchased the library when it was like at 280 samples. Now it's almost double that. And it's really, really affordable. So we're gonna use this Midnight Ambience in Chiang Mai, all right? So we're gonna use one of their samples to sort of build up some textures, and then we can use that to sort of reveal some details, okay? So anyway, I have a sample here, and let's just listen to the sample, okay? Some really dark, spooky stuff here, right? The alleyway in Chiang Mai. So I'm going to sort of clip a portion of this sample. You can see the waveform here is full of these details. I think there's like a motorcycle that drives by at some point. Yeah, so there's like a motorcycle moment, and there's some other stuff going on here. right? So I just want to like bring out some sort of cool like textural elements. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip the sample. The way I do that in Ableton and Arrangement View is just by hitting Control E. And then I'm going to grab, say, like this portion of it, okay? And now I have like sort of a main, you know, this is what, 64 bars of this, okay? I can click the sample, hit Shift E, and now I can sort of like manipulate the sample the way I want. So let's say, all right, so this is our sample length right here. We're just gonna select this portion of the sample. We're gonna warp this sample, and then we're going to loop it, okay? So we're gonna loop that section. Now that section is now looped. What we can also do is reverse the sample. So this is gonna take a minute because it's an intense process, but we're gonna reverse this sample. I'm also going to preserve the transients. I'm gonna put this on Complex Pro, just like that. Okay, so now we have a reversed sample of this, and I believe, yeah, we've got a set. Let's crop the clip. So we're gonna say crop sample, and now we have almost a perfect sort of 64 bar loop. As soon as this finishes processing, we can sort of loop this. So now we have, like, say, we can go ahead and say loop, and now we have a loop of this sample here, okay? Cool, good. So now we can drag it out as long as we want. Now when we listen to it, it's reversed, all right? That's kind of cool. Now, how we can sort of make this more ambient, if you will, is come over here to the audio effects, and we're gonna grab a resonator. Now, resonators come in lots of different DAWs. So this is not Ableton specific, but you can sort of like grab something that does something very similar. I'm going to put this on to G1, right? And then I'm gonna pitch this up a fourth and a fifth. So that's 5 semitones and 7 semitones respectively, all right? I'll turn off the other resonators for now, and I'm gonna turn this on to a low pass filter, and I can play with the frequency. Now listen to this in reverse with a resonator. Right, so now we have some real cool textural element with some musicality to play with. I really like where this is going, okay? I like this. So now you can even hear, like, what happens is some of the actual sonic details feed into the resonators, and they get like, they even create more harmonics. I love that, all right? So now what you can do at this point, grab Supermassive here and up the delay, up the warp time, up the mix, up the feedback, up the density. Now listen to this. We'll turn the mode on to, say, Andromeda. Oh yeah. Right, so here, now we've sort of revealed this world, right? And this is all from this Midnight Ambience sample, okay? It now sounds like a basic drone. And what we can do is we can play with the filtering of that, and we can actually start, you know, we can put it on, we can do auto pan, we can auto filter, that's cool. Grab an auto filter. And we can have this moving. So we can have it on a really slow LFO, or we could sort of manually do this on automation. I love this. And what this does, it sort of like sets the tone, and you can start to hear how you could get some really good ideas just from this one drum portion. So now let's start adding some more details. The first thing I'm gonna do is add my own pad from, say, a synthesizer. You could use any synth of your choice here. For this example, just to keep it beginner and keep it basic, I'm gonna use Serum. So Serum is a wavetable synthesizer, and it's really easy to understand and use, which is why I'm going to use it for this example, okay? So if you just hit, you know, the first key or first note on Serum, that's what you're gonna be presented with a sawtooth. So Serum's strength is not only in just playing, you know, virtual analog, but you can also use it to play through wavetables. So I've created some wavetables here, and let's find a good wavetable that has sort of like a really nice sonic texture to it. I've created these for my patrons on Patreon. These are really good. That would be cool. There's one in here that I really like. It's got like a really nice, That could work right there. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna use an LFO to scan through this wavetable. You guys have seen me do this on the channel before. But what this is gonna do on top of the drone that we already have, it's really gonna add some cool texture to it. So let's go ahead and take an LFO and we'll scan through this waveform really slowly. We'll use this at 4 bars, all right? We'll increase the unison here to say like 4 or 5, decrease the detuning, and let's, there you go. So now you have sort of a basic pad, right? Now, down here at the bottom, you have the attack, decay, sustain, and release section, all right? This is the envelope. So a pad has a very slow attack, okay? So we're gonna put this at like, say 5 seconds. You use the magnifying glass to zoom out here. We're gonna pull this down and then we're going to increase the decay to say 5 seconds. And then the sustain level. Now the sustain is really easy to understand in Serum because it has a dB level. So sustain is more like your volume. So think of it like that. You have the attack, which is the initial attack or the ramp. Then decay when it falls off, but where it stays is the sustain. If you have no sustain, it's gonna go right back down to the bottom eventually as soon as the decay stage is over. But if you have some sustain, it's going to maintain at that level. So think of it like volume. And then you're going to have the release. So there's your little mountain of ambient right there. That's basically 5 seconds, 6 seconds, and say 7 seconds. And we're gonna hit a couple keys. Right? That might be a little too long. You kind of want your pads to start a little bit quicker than that. And you can play with the detuning. Basically, unison is how many different copies of that waveform do you want, and then how are they going to be detuned, or you can just increase the tuning of them so they're way out of tune, or they're close to in tune. Unison can be a great way to add some really wide depth to a pad without even adding any reverb yet. So it's like you already hear how good the sound sounds before we even add any effects, and that's one of the things that I talked about in the beginning of this video. So now we have sort of like a bass pad drone, if you will. I'm gonna add a sub oscillator here, and I'm gonna put that to say direct out, and then we're gonna make that a triangle and turn on the level to give this pad some nice gravity, okay? Turn on the octave, there we go. All right. It's good. We can increase the voice count here to say like 12. And now let's listen to this alongside of our bass drone that was made out of the market sample. Let's check this out. Ah, yes, let's increase the attack here. I like this. Turn on the volume level, and I'm gonna add some reverb to this now. And now this is an outboard reverb that I already have built into my template. This is the Valhalla Room reverb. I'm just gonna show you guys the settings real quick. 100% mix, 55 seconds of decay time. And it's got some a subtle modulation here and the depth up to 100%, okay? So this is what we call the Kraken, right? It's a huge reverb, but when you sort of like add it onto a send effect, which is basically how much of that do you want to send to that reverb, it really does add some, shall I say, spaciness to the sound. Now, this combined with that, we're gonna add these two things together. Check this out. Right, so there's moments where this pad can come in and then the market sample can be revealed. So we're gonna sort of interplay between these two elements here. So let's go to a spot where the market sample is really loud. Right? So you can hear how, depending on what notes you're playing underneath that market sample, and you think of it like a sort of an interplay or a dance, right? So the market sample would come in and then you would respond. That's what another idea that I wanted to introduce was the idea of call and response. So the market makes the call and our serum pad makes the response, and vice versa, right? So you're constantly moving between these two things. Now you could add third or a fourth element. You could add all kinds of things just to get some more detail. So what we can do here is let's go ahead and, for the sake of time, let's paint in some notes here into this serum lane, if you will. So I'm gonna go ahead and make a MIDI clip, Control-Shift-M, and let's go ahead and draw this. I'm gonna change the color of this track to something I can see. There we go. And now we're just gonna flip over and to here, and we're going to turn off the fixed grid, okay, and grab our pencil tool. Now we have total control here as far as, you know, the length of the notes, what notes we want to play. But just keep in mind that I just made a 64 bar MIDI clip, so things are going to happen pretty slowly, especially because we're playing, let's play at like, you know, 84 BPM. That's good. All right. And we are playing in the key, again, in the key of G minor. So I'm going to set G minor here just so I can see exactly the palette I'm working with. Good. And I'm gonna go ahead and paint in some notes, right? So let's go ahead and just kind of grab this G. Again, if you're holding the mouse still and you move up and down, that's the velocity. So you can sort of like play with the velocity of the notes as you're drawing them in. This will be a nice sort of root tone here, and let's go ahead and add something on top of it. Bring the bass note in. Okay. Bring that C note in. That's nice. All right. And then we'll start to bring in some of the higher notes, maybe a high F. Okay, let's go ahead and play this. So you can kind of hear how this evolves. Again, the velocity does matter. As soon as we set the velocity in Serum, it'll really affect how it sounds. And maybe that note can go out as soon as that lower note comes in. Yeah, that was nice. Nice. And then I'm hearing another, like, you know, an A right here. So as it plays in real time, you can sort of compose. And this is one of the beauties of ambient music, is it's slow, it's evolving, and you can pretty much compose on the fly. You could also do this in real time. So anything that you can do to sort of like get in the moment, right, is going to be really effective, especially when you're trying to compose something that is going to stretch out over time and really evoke that slow moving, you know, sort of otherworldly experience to the listener. So let's go ahead and finish this up here. I'm going to go ahead and continue making this. Let's make another G here. We'll even grab a lower note. Maybe we'll go like down to D here and then make another chord. You know, I've been called the Bob Ross of ambient. It can be happy accidents. It doesn't always have to be scripted, right? So that's a little too high. Let's go here and make an A and then a G here. And we'll make another C, and we'll go ahead and make a chord like this. Let's go hear how that sounds. There we go. Ooh, mysterious. I like that. And then a B flat. Oh, that's gorgeous. Very nice. And then maybe a G, A to a B flat. And then F. How about G, A, F? Yeah. Very nice. Okay, cool. So that's another event that happens, right? So now what we can do is say, all right, that cool. We got that as a loop. So you can obviously just drag this out as long as you want, or you could have this and render this out as audio and then be able to play with that however you want. So let's go ahead and move this to say 4 bars in, or rather 16 bars. There we go. the level here. Perfect. All right. So now to further that idea of sonic depth of field, what I'm going to do is start drawing in some automation in both of these lanes. And that's really going to help us sort of like move in and out of these details, all right? So the way you do this in Ableton Live, now this is different for every DAW, is you hit configure here on your plugin and you can sort of like touch any of the knobs or click any of the knobs, and then they show up in this configure lane. Now what does that do? Once you click off configure, when you hit A on the keyboard, now you have control over the automation. Now this is controlling, as you can see there on the screen, it's controlling the filter cutoff. Now, what can we do with that? We can sort of like say, all right, when the filter is open, that's when we have the most sonic depth of field. And when it's closed, that's when the market scene is able to come out. So what we can do here is say, all right, well, let's start drawing in some shapes. Now, what you can do in Ableton, they have a really cool feature where you select an area and then you sort of have this insert shape function down here on the bottom. I can insert, say, a ramp. And we can sort of move this up so it's not so, so like out of focus here. And then we can sort of say, all right, cool. We'll have a down ramp here. And now we'll just say, all right, we can grab this section, have a down ramp, nice. And then we'll pull this up again and we'll pull this point up. And then from here to here, we'll say, all right, let's have another up ramp, right? And it's sort of funny how this works, but you can sort of like grab it and then now you have control over both of those points. And yeah, so you can sort of pull these points however you see fit. You can make these as close as you want. You can pull this over and it's going to make that nice curve. And then you can go ahead and make another down ramp here. This is nice. So you can sort of just kind of sculpt along and say at certain moments, I want this to happen. So when those notes happen, the filter's all the way open pretty much, right? And then it closes down. Now we're going to close the filter down when we get to that really intense part of the market scene, and then we're gonna open it back up when the market is quieter. So again, sonic depth of field here to reveal details, right? That's what we're doing. So let's go ahead and open this filter up here. Go ahead, there you go. And now you have a nice curve. You can see that. Down ramp. Down ramp, there we go. Take that out. You can see the process here of drawing. There we go. And then we'll do one more up ramp at the end. And we're gonna do this again with the market scene, okay? So there we go, and now it's open again, right? Cool. So now we have a nice curve here on the end of our filter cutoff. Go ahead. You hear that? There we go. And what we can do is with the market scene, we can say, let's do the same thing on the delay level. You can do whatever you want. You can say, all right, let's go ahead and make the delay up really high here and then low here. And then we'll take the delay down, maybe like ramp it up at random places, right? So here it's really all the way in. And you get some cool details like that. You can also do this with the auto filter. So let's go ahead and we will select this track and we'll go ahead and do that with auto filter. So what we'll do is we will hit A again and we'll come over here to the auto filter and we'll select the frequency. Now the frequency of the auto filter is obviously the level. You can see the auto filter moving down there. So we can say, all right, well, at that moment, let's open it up slowly here and then we'll take it down again and then up again and then maybe up really quickly and then down again. And then, you just be creative with this. So it doesn't have to be exact, but at the same time, the results you're gonna get create these events. And this is what I was talking about in the entire introduction of this video is the idea of sonic depth of field, bringing things in and out. So I hope the core concepts are resonating with you, no pun intended, so that you guys can understand how this can interplay in an ambient context, right? This is nice. I like this. There we go. Because this is now in MIDI, I mean, we're playing with MIDI here, so it's only gonna trigger when the actual notes happen, but this is good. I like that. We have some nice automation going on here. You can see the automation is here in Serum. All right, let's go ahead and finish this off. Very nice. I like that. We'll make some subtle delay movements here. Let's extend these out. that. Bring it down. There we go. Perfect. Excellent. So the last thing we're going to do to bring this all together is build some sort of evolving sequence here to really tie this track and take it to the next level. All right. So I'm going to grab some basic synths and some sequencers here, but you can use pretty much anything you want here. I just want to make that clear is that you don't have to have the plugins that I'm using just to make a sequence like this. I just use it because it's really convenient and it's super fast to show you guys exactly what I'm talking about. So what I'm going to do here is set my Euclidean sequencer to 4 bars and 4 steps, just like 4/4, right? And we're going to go ahead and hit the scale function and set it on G minor. Then I can start shuffling these notes. Now, whatever that's the range I've set on this Euclidean sequencer, it's going to give you 4 random notes in that range, okay? And that's cool. I like that. And what we can do is tie a synth after that, and then it's really going to come to life. So I'm going to grab a synth. You could grab, say, Vital or Serum. I'm just going to grab Hive because Hive is my favorite synth. It usually sounds so good. So I'm going to pull the cutoff down. We're going to leave our filter at 24 dB. That's 4 pole, and it's really good for plucks, okay? And I'm just going to do a simple recipe here by lowering the decay, lowering the release, and adding a mod envelope. And then we're going to go ahead and listen to this. This is just a sawtooth waveform here, and we're going to put this onto, say, sine. Now we're listening to a sine and a sawtooth through a filter with a quick envelope. Hear this sounds. Okay? And the reason why that sounds the way it sounds is because I have this mod envelope, aka the filter envelope, tied to like the gate. So whenever it triggers, it gives us that envelope shape, which is, again, here, I can lower the decay down, up the decay, up. That's basically a filter envelope. Okay, and now we can start playing with the notes. So I don't really like those notes pretty much. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab the sequencer again. Let's go ahead and reveal this. And you can go ahead and shuffle the notes, whatever you want. That's closer. That's interesting. You can hear how it really interplays with the, I think I'm just gonna leave it there, okay? So now what I was talking about was a slow evolving sequence, right? And what we can do here is I'm gonna grab my delay. Now my delay here is not stock, shall I say. This is Timeless 3 from FabFilter. What I love about this delay is it gives you control over the individual taps, and it's really, really great. This preset will be available some point on our Sound Design Wing material by Synphaera. So just know that, like, this, either you're seeing this video later or it's already come out, but either way, this preset is called Beyond the Horizon. And I'm going to add this as a send effect, meaning I'm sending a portion of my audio to that delay. And this is what it sounds like through Timeless 3. Okay. So you can hear it sort of reflecting back that basic sequence, right? And what I mean by details or revealing the details, we're gonna do a slow evolving filter movement. Now, this is like a classic trick that I always do on my sequences. We're gonna put this LFO on sync mode, and then we're going to lower the time base to, say, 5/1. All right. Now 5 is an odd number. So what that does, it gives the filter cutoff like sort of like this, it doesn't happen every single like 4 bars. It happens every 5 bars, which ends up being, you know, a different time value than an actual 4/4. So I'm going to tie this to the cutoff of the filter. And what that's doing, it's a really slow evolving LFO. So not only is it going to have this quick mod envelope, which is just going to happen every single time because it's tied to the gate, but this LFO is going to slowly evolve in that space. So I'm setting the value here in that space. So now see, it's pulling back, and then it's coming up again, right? We can actually raise this an octave. There we go. So you see, at certain moments, the sequence comes in, and then it pulls back. Again, sonic depth of field, the interplay of these elements. You can shuffle these again. That's nice. I like that. Cool. We can go ahead and manually change the notes here to whatever we want. You can make this one pattern, say, and then shift it to another pattern, and then maybe another pattern after that. Like, you know, you can get really crazy. And again, this is just 4 notes. We could have drawn this into our DAW, but you hear how the market's being revealed now? Sequence is pulling back, pads coming in. I like this. Oof, that is nice. All right. I think I'm gonna bookend it here. I mean, honestly, like, it's up to you. Like, you could really take this as far as you can go. I mean, doing something that's like this as a beginner ambient track, this is a good place to start because this gives you a number of pathways to go from here. You could add little micro details, more pads into it, take the market or the pad completely out, add another sequence on top of this, add some bass. We didn't even get to the bass today. There's so many things that we left open-ended, but as sort of a beginner ambient track, it's a great start. And I'm really happy that we brought this whole tutorial to this point because this is like, we've reached this spot where it's like, we see the pathway ahead. We see the canyon below, right? We know where we're going now. So thank you guys so much for watching. I truly appreciate it. Like, this kind of thing is my joy to bring to you because I truly believe that anyone can make this kind of music. You just need to start somewhere along the path. So whether that's starting from absolute base level and you don't know anything, or you're just like somewhere along in your journey, you might have picked up something today in today's session. If you want to learn more, check out my Patreon. We have a great, wonderful community there, and there's more tutorials. There's tons of extra presets, and I do a full track walkthrough every month. And we also have the Signed Circle, which is a really cool and amazing group that meets once a month, and we provide track feedback for each other, and it's become a wonderful part of the Patreon. So there's 5 different tiers. You can join for as little as $3 a month. So if you want to support me and support this channel and you love the content that I provide, check out my Patreon. The link's down below in the description. Otherwise, I'll be back again soon. I mean, this is just like, I feel like we're at the dawn of a whole new age, and we're just getting started, and we're doing it together. My name is Chris from Signs of Life. Thank you again for watching. Take good care, and as always, keep your heads in the clouds and your feet planted firmly on the ground. I'll see you guys next time.